In this month, as we explore what it means to live with intention, this morning we focus on the powerful intersection of intention and impact, those whom we create by the choices we make and those who create us by the love and care and attention they show. This morning's chalice lighting is by Albert Schweitzer, who reminds us so powerfully at times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. And so this morning, as this flame burns and as we gather again, let us think with gratitude of those who impact us each and every day.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our worship service here at the River Road Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Reverend Karen Rasmussen, your affiliate minister, and we are so happy that you're joining us here this morning. Whether you're a newcomer or have been a part of this beloved congregation for years, you are welcome here. Although we wish we were in person here in the sanctuary, we are being so safe and careful. And we know the day will come when we're given elbow bumps and fist bumps and seeing your twinkling eyes above your mask once again. We miss you. And we have faith and confidence that we'll be in person again when it is safe and practical to do so. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us this morning and a warm welcome to you on this chilly January morning.
Many years ago, after I graduated from business school, I decided to take a vacation. I chose a small, quiet fishing village where I thought I'd be able to take my mind off of business, if only for a few days. Walking along the beach just before sunset, I saw a small fishing boat coming to shore. Inside the boat were a lone fisherman and several beautiful yellowfin tuna. "How long did it take you to catch those fish?" I asked. "Only a couple of hours," he replied. "Why don't you stay out a bit longer and catch more?" I asked, certain that there must be a demand for more fish than the few I saw in the boat. The fisherman smiled. "I catch enough to support my family, and I live a full and busy life. I rise with the sun, fish a little, play with my daughters, have lunch with my family, and then teach children how to fish before I stroll into the village each evening, where I sip wine and play guitar with my wife and friends." "Listen," I said, "I have an MBA. I can help you vastly expand your business. If you would simply spend more time fishing, you would soon earn enough money to buy a bigger boat." "Really?" questioned the fisherman. "Absolutely. And with a bigger boat, you'd soon catch enough fish to buy several boats, then a whole fleet. At that point, you'd be big enough to sell your fish directly to a processor, cutting out the middleman and greatly increasing your profits." The fisherman raised an eyebrow. "Eventually, you could open your own cannery and control the product, the processing, and the distribution," I added. "Then what?" he asked. "Well, you then relocate your operations to the capital, and if all goes well, you'd likely find yourself in New York City in control of a rapidly expanding empire." "How long would all of this take?" he asked, clearly following my logic. "Oh, probably between 10 and 15 years, I replied. "And then what?" "Well, that's the best part. You would announce an IPO and sell stock to the public. At that point, my friend, you would be very, very rich, a millionaire many times over. The fisherman paused. Really, a millionaire? Then what? What do you mean? I answered, a bit surprised. I mean, what would I do if I were a millionaire? What kind of question is that? Whatever you like, of course. I imagine you'd retire, move to a small coastal fishing village where you would rise with the sun, fish a little, play with your granddaughters, have lunch with your family, and then teach children how to fish before strolling into the village each evening where you'd sip wine and play guitar with your wife and friends. The fisherman smiled, and without saying another word, began to build a small fire. We shared a taste of the delicious fish and watched the sun go down over the ocean as the sound of guitars rose from the village nearby.
Always we gather with the weight and wonder of the world. We gather with losses fresh on our hearts and joys that we are just beginning to discover. We gather in this time of joys and sorrows to recommit, to grieve, and to celebrate. This morning we honor the life of Jack Edmondson, founding member and longtime lay leader here at River Road, who passed away on January 3rd. Jack spent much of his career overseas promoting housing for the poor and continues his advocacy for low-income housing locally when he returned to the D.C. area. Having spent 3 years with his wife in Jerusalem, he brought deep knowledge and passion to River Road's Middle East Task Force. Through illness, eventually denied him the active role here that he loved, he remained a vicarious part of our community worship and advocacy. His daughter, Bibi, will plan a memorial service to be held at River Road later this year. We are because of him. We also grieve the passing of Vietnamese Buddhist teacher and spiritual guide Thich Nhat Hanh, who labored to bring peace through engaged Buddhism, addressing the very real evils of the world through nonviolence. His peaceful life was surrounded by the world's suffering, and his model of grace in the midst of the storm was a powerful teaching tool to many around the world. We also gather as the winds of anxiety blow around us right here on Montgomery County, knowing that our students, our own families, faced violence and the threat of violence at Magruder High School in Rockville this week. With a student in critical condition, a minor with a gun in police custody, and countless families reeling from the fear, we know that gun violence is not a problem in some other place, for some other people, but makes a painful home right here in our own hearts. For this, and for so much more, we lift ourselves up in love and grief and remembering.
We lift ourselves up in love, in grief, and in remembering. We lift ourselves up to the task of knowing that just as in that story of our prophetic voices today, we have the capacity to make real choices for our lives that prioritize not only our happiness, but the well-being of our people. We have the capacity to move in this world as active agents of hope and of change. And so this morning, in this time of prayer and centering, I've chosen words and practice adapted lightly from that great agent of active hope and change, Thich Nhat Hanh, who, though he passed this week, left a legacy behind him, reminding the whole world that even in the midst of chaos, great peace and abiding joy are possible. This meditation, the 9 prayers of Thich Nhat Hanh, invite you, of course, to take a deep breath and a good seat, calling to mind, first of all, compassion for your own self, your own being, and next and always, compassion perhaps for the one person you love the most or a person you struggle to hold in your heart. These 9 prayers extend both inside and out, and I invite you to share them with me. May I be peaceful, happy, and light in body and in spirit. May they be peaceful, happy, and light in body and in spirit. May I be free from injury. May I live in safety. May they be free from injury. May they live in safety. May I be free from disturbance, fear, and anxiety. May they be free from disturbance, fear, and anxiety. May I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and of love. May they learn to look at themselves with the eyes of understanding and of love. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness within myself. May they be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness within themselves. May I know how to nourish those seeds of joy in myself every day. May they know how to nourish those seeds of joy in themselves every day. May I be able to live fresh and solid and free. May they be able to live fresh and solid and free. May I be free from attachment and aversion, but not ever be indifferent. May they be free from attachment and aversion, but never, not ever, indifferent. Amen. Sometimes over the years, I have worried that there is simply too much doing in our congregation. Too much busyness, too many tasks, too much one thing leading to another, inevitably toward some end of just more doing, much like the businessmen in our story today. But then I remember that all of our doing is really just an expression of the way in which we want to be together in the world. The choices we make in our mission and our ministry and our connections are an expression of the values that we hold. And there are so many ways for you to invite yourself to greater involvement following your own values. I think today of the fact that coming up in February, we'll have beginning and belonging courses online for those who want to find out more about what it is to be a part of this wacky and wonderful community. Of the Thrive 2050 campaign that is actively determining the future of Montgomery County right now, and you can find out how to engage that more richly in our e-weekly newsletter. And of course, I think of what it is we're creating together for the future of our congregation, for what we will leave behind in the generations to come, much as Jack Edmondson and others left this place for us to receive. On February 13th, the board and I and your ministerial and worship team will be sharing with you here in our worship service a very important opportunity for visioning, where together we'll have a short online service with breakout groups that follow, where we will invite you to ask the very questions that will help shape who we are, not only post-pandemic, but in the decades and generations to come. Together, we'll ask what makes you feel most included and alive in our congregation. What aspects of our congregation make you feel left out or alone? What it would look and feel like to fully live into our anti-racist commitments in the 8th principle, and how we can reframe doing all the work of justice and the work of congregational life as a joy rather than an obligation. These are conversations we can only have together in a network of mutuality that we create for one another, and we hope you will join us. There's so much else happening, including an invitation in our Contemporary Issues Forum to learn more about how to get engaged in the humanitarian crises happening all around the world. And always, always, we extend our generosity through our Extending the Offering program, where not only our effort, but yes, our monetary gifts extend to help the world. This month, our Extending the Offering collection goes to a long-time salt-of-the-earth bedrock partner of River Roads Ministries, La Clínica del Pueblo, which you will hear more about right now.
Happy New Year, River Road. This is Catalina Sol from La Clínica del Pueblo. Greetings from all of us. It's such a shame that we continue to have to see each other in this virtual fashion, yet we continue to persevere. These are difficult times indeed, yet I think we all have to recognize that COVID is a public health emergency, an operational challenge, but not who and what we are. We have a beautiful mission, a beautiful community, and today we wanted to share a video of some of our ongoing work with diabetes that began pre-pandemic, continues today, and really could not continue without the support of congregations and people like you. We wish you the very best this year, and here's hoping for more opportunities to see you in person. Bye-bye. La Clínica's patient population is primarily Latino immigrants. Almost 90% of our patients identify as Hispanic origin. 85% of our patients do not speak English as their first language. We serve a large chronically ill population. Hypertension, diabetes, and HIV are our top diagnoses. Addressing the social determinants of health is not just a good thing to do, it's the only thing that we can do to be able to achieve the health outcomes that we all want. Frequent barriers that La Clínica Pueblo patients experience are health insurance access, language access, culturally competent care, affordable housing, legal services, food access. Having a safe space where people could come and get services in their own language from members of the community or providers that understood the context which they came from was really the main reason to create La Clínica in the first place. My hope is that we'll be able to resolve the health access for immigrants in this country and understand that public health doesn't work if it doesn't work for all. Bridging the Gap lets us bring our work around community health promotion, wellness, integrated team-based care, learning, education, and cultural competency together. And we have also been able to integrate more screening around social determinants in a standardized way. My hope for the future is that our health sector will continue to evolve in the direction that it's going in its best form, which is to understand that health is not just the absence of disease, that health is broader than healthcare, and that to produce health, we need to address not just what happens in our body or even in our local environment, but the structures that we create to live, work, and play.
Giving is an act of ministry. It is in many ways an act of creation, of taking a spark of possibility that we are so blessed to have and releasing it out to do good and holy work in the world. We do hope that you will give as you are willing and able in so many ways. As Grace sings, as the music plays, you can give in these COVID days, as always, through your texting to give feature 73256 plus RRUUC in the amount. You can send a check right here to the building. You can go to our website at rruuc.org. However you give, wherever you give, may your giving indeed be the spark of something new.
I've got an itching on the tips of my fingers. I've got a boiling in the back of my brain. I've got a hunger burning inside me, cannot be denied. I got a feeling that the spirits who made me, when they were kindling the pulse in my veins, they left a tiny spark of the fire smoldering inside. The spark of creation is flickering within me. The spark of creation is blazing in my blood. A bit of the fire that lit up the stars and breathed life into the mud. The first inspiration, the spark of creation. I see a mountain and I want to climb it. I see a river and I want to leave shore. Where there is nothing, let there be something, something made by me. There's things waiting for me to invent them. There's worlds waiting for me to explore. I am an echo of the eternal cry of let there be the spark of creation burning bright within me. The spark of creation won't let me rest at all until I discover or build or uncover a thing that I can call my celebration of the spark of creation. The spark of creation, may it burn forever. The spark of creation, I am a keeper of the flame. We think all we want is a lifetime of leisure, each perfect day the same, endless vacation. Oh, that's alright if you're a kind of crustacean, but when you're born without imagination, sooner or later you're feeling the fire, you're higher and higher. The spark of creation.
When I was a young adult, I remember so vividly being dismayed by the chasm of difference between how interesting and bright my thoughts of what I might create in the world were while they lived inside my own heart, and how odd and pedantic those very same creative thoughts magically appeared when I attempted to get them out of my head using actual words. You know, the space between intention and action, the space between the spark and the fire, the space between intention and impact, when the lived reality of a thing becomes altogether less shiny and less interesting when you hold it in your hand than it was when it was made only of the flimsy stuff of imagination and hope. This morning, I was going to try and give you examples of this phenomenon of the space between thought and action, of intent and impact. I was going to try to give you a little litany of the glorious awkwardness and occasional pain that I've experienced in that space in my own life, the jokes that did not land, the words that came out as slights, the messages I never meant to send. But honestly, it is entirely too mundane and universal to put you all through that. We've all been there, over and over and over again, holding the distance between what we intended to birth into the world and what we actually gave rise to in the end measure. I make light of it now, but for me, this distance between intention and impact, it has often caused real anxiety. Anxiety that is surely connected to the vastness of the forces of this world that are so much bigger than me, that take hold of my spark of hope, my spark of intention, and carry it in directions over which I have no control. So much bigger than any of us alone, these forces that take our best intentions and carry them forward in frightening and unpredictable ways. I am anxious because I do not want to be who I do not mean to be. Not for nothing, especially as a young adult, I do not want to feel guilty for what I can't control, or I didn't then. My colleague Jennifer Nordstrom has described this journey of what we intend with what we birth into the world and the impact of what we birth into the world. This journey of intent and impact, she has described it as an arrow arcing through tumultuous windswept air, let loose by someone who surely once had a target in mind, landing sometimes so very far away from what they had imagined. It so happens that in my young adulthood, at the very peak of my awkward wondering if I even had the power to aim my arrows at all, I was also making a fairly intensive study of medieval Christian philosophy for my undergraduate theology degree, which I am sure is a sentence that just proves that I was so undeniably cool as a young adult that every awkward and unintended word was swept away in a sheer blaze of everyone's astonishment at that coolness. Definitely. For sure. But anyway, in that really cool time, when I was really nervous how the world would receive me and I was reading medieval Christian philosophy, I came across a concept from the work of the 12th century French philosopher Peter Abelard that I thought might just set myself free from a good deal of the guilt and anxiety I carried about the trajectory of my hastily fired arrows of thought and action. I remember it vividly. This late teenage discovery that left me feeling like many late teenage discoveries do, almost giddy. This Abelard, this theologian from long ago, he taught an ethical doctrine which he called intentionalism. You see, in Abelard's view, later copped by no less a worthy personage than Kant himself, it is not how an action lands in the world that determines its moral worth. No, Abelard taught, it is the intention of the one who is acting that determines the moral worth of what we do. In his ethical worldview, it is not where the arrow lands, the impact that matters. It is the spirit with which you let it fly. All else, he taught, is out of your hands, whisked away by happenstance and destiny and the whims of other people and fickle gods. All you can do, Abelard taught, was aim and shoot the arrow, which would in turn soar through air buffeted by winds you cannot control and did not create, which means that should the arrow land far from your target, should it even land in a way that hurts, that pains, that kills, even then, so long as it was not your intention, he taught that the moral burden did not rest on you. Hands clean. No damn dirty spot to scrub off in your shame. It is not your fault, he taught, if your actions have terrible consequences, not so long as their intentions were actually pure. It is not your fault if it all goes sideways, not so long as your arrow was aimed straight. It is not your fault, Nancy, it is not your fault, is what I heard. It is not your fault. And I took it as a blessing. As a young person in a scary world, when so much was out of my control, that doctrine of Abelard's intentionalism told me that the impact of my flawed efforts was not my problem, that I only had power over my hands and the tools I held within them and how I meant to use them. I held that idea as a balm on my soul in those early years of young adulthood. I held it as a reminder that it was the endeavor that mattered, not the result, when the result felt so out of my control. It comforted me because the result of everything seemed so difficult and the wind so strong, and I felt so small. But can I tell you something? Something far too nerdy for you ever to have wanted to know it. Can I tell you that Peter Abelard, that 12th century scholar who gave me and the world that doctrine that only intention mattered, can I tell you that Peter Abelard was kind of an ass? Like truly. And if you read a little deeper into his philosophy, you find that he was also kind of an egomaniac who hurt people, particularly the woman he loved and who loved him. He hurt her, and he told himself that it happened with the best of intentions, and eventually he got hurt too, because that is what happens, I now know. When we tell ourselves that it doesn't matter where the arrows we have loosed land once they leave our bow, that is what happens. When we tell ourselves that intention matters more than impact, people still get hurt. And the purity of our intentions does nothing whatsoever to change it. What I have learned, most of all from colleagues in anti-racist and anti-oppressive work over the years, is that the phrase, "I didn't mean it that way," is the number one emotional and linguistic catchphrase for people who want to dodge their own moral responsibility. The road to hell, they say, is paved with good intentions. And the space between intention and impact is a space in which oppression bloweth where it listeth and maketh from even our best intentions yet another in a very long list of deadly impacts. In other words, the dying man does not care that you meant to shoot someone else. The beaten woman does not care that in your heart you really love her. Your mother does not care that you really meant to pick up the phone and call her, and your friend does not care that you really didn't mean to insult her haircut. She feels it all the same. And the feeling of it, the lived experience of that feeling, is far more real than the intention behind it ever could have been on a systemic level. This Kantian intentionalism is built into our system of law and punishment, and we are grateful that this is so. The presence or absence of intent makes all the difference in criminal courts, perhaps just as it should, and yet at the same time, on a systemic level, someone somewhere must take responsibility for the fact that the arrows which hurt, which harm and bring death, so often fly in the same direction every time at those who are already marginalized and most at risk. Someone needs to take responsibility for where the arrows land, and someone on a systemic level very rarely does. On a personal level, there are the people we love and the hurt we cause them. It is a condition of the loving. There is the intentionalist, Abelard, Kantian reaction, which I guarantee you all have had. You know it. That is not what I meant. Then there is the compassionate reaction. I am so sorry that you're hurting. There is a flipping from I to you. From the internal state of the actor to the lived experience of the one acted upon, which entails a choice in which we have agency and power. We can choose where to focus our attention, our defensiveness, our efforts. Does it lie with our own desperate need for absolution, or does it lie with the lived reality of the person we care about who is suffering right now? As the scholar Dr. Imani Perry put it recently, if we are to survive together, we must create relationships that are beyond good intentions. In her words, I say post-intent, because for me, I want to get away from concentrating so much on what is in people's hearts, because I want to focus instead on the consequences for those who are subject to inequality. So I say post-intent, meaning that it's not really what we want to focus on, whether or not someone meant it. We want to focus on how people behave, how we can help people behave more generously. And so the question is not, did I mean to do it? Or what do I mean? Or how can my intention be realized? The question is simply, how can we hurt each other less? In this way, the moral life is a matter not of seeking absolution or dodging responsibility, but of harm reduction for us all. As C.S. Lewis once put it, true humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. It is a lesson I must learn and relearn over and over again. True humility is loosing the arrows of your actions and words out into the world while relating meaningfully to the sources of the winds that will inevitably blow it, the state of being of the people on the other side, the ways in which they themselves are moving always in directions that are all their own, the world in which your life, your efforts, your love is all situated, a world in which no good intention is ever preserved in amber to last unchanged throughout the ages. The author George Saunders has said that real art only ever happens when the artist takes responsibility. Responsibility, not just for having an idea, but for the way that idea interacts with the ones who receive it. Creating things. The spark of creation, creating things, is not a monologue. Instead, it is a relationship built between the artist and the ones who experience the art. The writer and the reader, the painter and the child who looks up at those brushstrokes on the gallery wall 300 years later and sees herself reflected back. The artist takes responsibility for what the artwork elicits in the people, and each person, all of us by extension, take responsibility for how our actions weave themselves out into the world. In this way, living with intention, which is our theme this month, it invites us, yes, to aim the arrows of our living straight and sure, to set goals, to understand our power and our direction, to be guided by our values and the choices we make, but living with intention. It also means living with ourselves when our intentions inevitably go awry. It means living in relationship to the air around us that catches our arrows in its unpredictable course, living in relationship to all those at the other end of the arrow's path, living with the responsibility of the impact our choices make on others. Living with intention means living with ourselves and living with others in a world that is unpredictable on every level, but in which we are never, ever fully alone. I think when I was a teenager and I was so relieved to find the doctrine that intention mattered most, what I was really looking for was a sense that I wasn't standing before the chaos all alone, and that if I did mess up, when I did mess up, when everything went sideways, I wouldn't be cast out forever. I think I was not so much just looking for my own absolution as looking for a connection into which I could pour my anxiety. Maybe I was looking for a sense that when it all went sideways, I would still be loved. And the fact is that we do not need the presumption of our own innocence to face this uncertain world with open hearts. What we need is one another. What we need is a dialogue rather than a monologue where intent and impact are in constant conversation with each other, and the direction of every arrow is everyone's problem because we are all, every one of us, in the flight of each other's best hopes and highest intentions and deepest pains. When my jokes don't land, when it all comes out wrong, when my arrows, even the really important ones, miss their mark, may I and you know that we are in this together, and that the holy responsibility of each other's well-being rests not on any one of us alone, but on each and every archer in each and every place, taking what is inside of us and giving it a shape that heals more often than it harms.
Behold the hills of tomorrow. Behold the limitless sky. Fling wide the gates to a world that waits as our journey starts. Behold our hearts are high.
one of the ways to loose arrows that land in life instead of death, in hope instead of suffering, is to share our gratitude. Gratitude for the people who make it all more doable. Gratitude for the people who bring beauty in the midst of chaos. Gratitude for the people we just love to be around. And this morning we are grateful for each and every one of us who brought this time of togetherness into our homes and into our community. For our tech team, as always, this family who have found each other and found you through the wires of the internet age. Dave, Marcia, Jeff Hollingsworth, all of our musicians, Schwai, Cliff, Grace, thank you. Reverend Karin, what a gift it is to bring to bear all the tools we have in community and in worship. And as we take this light we have kindled out into the waiting world, may you go then to be who you already are. You are the beloved and precious children of everything that is sacred in this world and beyond it. And the goodness and mercy, the joy and the justice, the power and the possibility of the Spirit are at loose in you and through you in the world. So go then to be who you already are, and may you be abundantly blessed. Amen.